Bang! A baton slammed into the hood of a BMW. Luxury car? Black guy? Wearing a suit? In this neighborhood? No chance. Two officers rushed in. No warning. No explanation. Hands on the hood. On your knees. Now. The man set his leather briefcase down. Still silent. But you know the most shocking part? The man they were cuffing was a federal judge. Not just any judge. He was the one who signed indictments against cops just like them. If that happened to your neighbor, what would you do? Stand back? Or speak up? Stay with us. Because this story doesn't end in silence. It ends in court. Night settled over the Woodvale Terrace neighborhood like a heavy curtain. The air wasn't cool. It was stifling, as if the atmosphere itself was waiting for something about to explode. Streetlights cast a yellow haze over the steaming asphalt, where a sleek black BMW slowly rolled up in front of 1225 Woodvale Terrace. Inside the car sat Kendrick Alton, 54 years old, still in a navy blue suit, the creases sharp. He exhaled a long, quiet breath. Another day at the Bellmere federal courthouse had come to an end. Kendrick wasn't a man who tired easily, but tonight he felt a weight pressing down on him. The weight of the cases he judged, the weight of a world that refused to be fair, and the deeper weight of knowing not even the gleaming federal badge in his coat pocket could always shield him from certain stares. He opened the car door, hadn't even set one foot out, when blinding headlights struck his face from across the street. A North Bellmere police precinct cruiser came barreling toward him, too fast, then screeched to a sudden stop right at his driveway. Out of the car, hands on the hood. Now, that wasn't a command. It was a sentence. Earlier that night, a vague call had come through dispatch. Suspicious black vehicle seen circling Woodvale. No license plate, no description, but in their minds, an image had already formed. Someone who didn't look like they belonged. Kendrick hadn't even asked what was happening before two officers were already closing in. One was massive, built like an NFL linebacker, a granite jaw and blank stare. His name, Brant Colridge. The other was wiry, sharp-featured, with flaming red hair and a smirk that only men who treat power like a toy ever wear. That one, Mitch Raskin. What you doing? Shut your mouth. Hands on the hood, or on the ground. No sirens, no flashing lights, no explanation, just the silent message. You don't belong here. Kendrick carefully set his leather briefcase on the curb. Inside it, documents from 3 federal cases. One of them, a police misconduct trial. The irony burned in his chest. I live here. This is my home. Bang. Mitch Raskin slammed his baton onto the BMW's hood, leaving a deep dent like a crater. His face didn't twitch. It was as if he were just testing the metal. Well, a Beamer, huh? Fancy man, Mitch sneered. Brant Colridge didn't sneer. He glanced at the name tag on Kendrick's briefcase, then nodded once, like he had all the reason he needed to see this well-dressed black man as a threat. I suggest you stop. I'm willing to present ID, and no one cares about your ID. Get on the ground. Now, Kendrick clenched his fist. He wasn't the kind of man who bowed easily, but he wasn't foolish either. This wasn't the time to state titles. This was the time to survive. He knelt down. Both knees touched the scorching pavement. The cruiser's headlights blasted straight into his eyes. He heard the cold click of handcuffs, and for the first time that night, he no longer felt like himself. Kendrick Alton's wrists were now locked tightly behind his back. The icy cuffs bit into his dark skin. He remained calm, but his heartbeat pounded in his ears, a steady war drum inside his chest. The burning scent of scorched plastic from the car's hood, mixed with the heat of the asphalt, and the cold sweat crawling down his spine. It made the air feel suffocating. Brant Colridge stood behind him. One heavy hand clamped down on Kendrick's shoulder like a slab of stone. No explanation, no warrant, no procedure, just cold steel eyes, and the posture of a man used to imposing himself on others. I just got back from federal court. I am. Oh, now everybody's coming back from court, huh? Mitch Raskin cut him off, his laugh a sharp hiss between clenched teeth. He leaned in, taunting eyes narrowing. Out this late? Wearing a suit? Driving a luxury car? Lurking around a quiet neighborhood? Yeah, real believable. Kendrick looked him straight in the eye. Not afraid, but not provoking either. Just the steady calm of someone who's faced injustice before. Inside courtrooms and out on the streets. He knew this scene by heart. He'd read it in hundreds of testimonies. Unjustified stops, groundless arrests, all for looking suspicious. And sometimes suspicious was just another way of saying black, in the wrong place, at the wrong time. It didn't need sirens. It didn't need a reason. All they needed was the arrogance stitched into their uniforms. Brant sniffed the air near the hood. Smells like gasoline. Smells dirty. That smells from my car, Kendrick said, his voice calm, but now edged with steel. You cracked the fuel line when you slammed your Baton. Oh, is that so? Mitch grinned wide. So should I be worried about the gas tank? Or whatever little surprise you might be hiding the trunk, huh? Brant turned to look Kendrick over again, shook his head, like he was confirming what he already believed. No one wears a suit like that unless they're hiding something. Around them, a few porch lights flickered on. From a window at 1229, an old neighbor, Ms. Leona Brewster, peeked through her curtain. Her eyes met Kendrick's for a brief second. Then, whoosh, the curtain dropped shut. No one wanted to be involved. No one wanted to speak. Just minutes earlier, Kendrick Alton had been a federal judge, making decisions that impacted thousands. Now, he was just a black man, handcuffed in the dark, on the sidewalk outside the home he'd lived in for over 2 decades. He saw it clearly in their eyes, in their every move. They didn't need a reason. They didn't care who he was. They had already cast him in the role. The suspect, the threat, the outsider, and Kendrick Alton, a man who once held the scales of justice for the entire state of Southland, understood one thing tonight. That scale didn't belong to him anymore. Now, Kendrick Alton, age 63, remained kneeling, one knee on the concrete edge of the walkway to his front lawn. A 2-story brick house, steep roof, white fence. Quiet neighborhood, west side of Bellmere. The porch light was still on. It lit up the house number mounted at the door, 1225 Woodvale Terrace, a place Kendrick had called home for 22 years. And yet here he was, being treated like an intruder. I told you I live here, Kendrick repeated, try to keep his voice steady. He was still dressed in the same Navy suit he'd worn that afternoon for a federal hearing. His black Samsonite briefcase still lay tipped over near the front step. The only thing left behind when they forced him to the ground. Brant Colridge, the bulky officer with a beard that couldn't hide his aggression, spat into the grass, then looked around the neighborhood. Funny, he muttered. You say you live here, but no one around's ever mentioned your name. Maybe because I don't run around the block like an 8-year-old. Kendrick replied, his gaze locked on Colridge. Oh, you've got a mouth on you. Mitch Raskin cut in, sneering. Real smooth. Nice suit. What is that? Hourly rental. Kendrick pressed his lips together. He'd heard these kinds of digs before. He'd seen countless black professionals, picked apart, second-guessed, accused of pretending, just because they didn't look like they belonged. But there was one thing these 2 officers didn't know. He was the man who had signed off on indictments in some of the largest corruption cases in the state. He had sentenced officers who'd abused their power, just like this. And just last month, federal judge Kendrick Alton had delivered a keynote address on justice at the state capitol. But tonight, in Bellmere, none of that mattered. I can provide documents. This house is in my name, and my wife's since 2002. My briefcase contains a federal ID. You're welcome to check. ID. Mitch raised an eyebrow, feigning interest. What is it? Chess club membership. You people always carry something to pretend you belong. Brant nodded, chuckling. You know what? This neighborhood just ain't for folks who look like you. You know what I mean? No, Kendrick replied, his eyes colder now. I don't, and I don't think you understand this either. Who belongs where? Isn't up to you. Brant stepped in closer, his breath reeking of mint and tobacco. I'll make the call when I see something off. And tonight, you're off. Your skin, your car, that suit. They all scream not from here. Kendrick closed his eyes for a brief moment. The night remained thick. The air clung like glue. But underneath it all, Inside him, something else stirred. Not fear. Clarity. Sharp as a blade. They had just made the worst mistake of their careers. Raskin, check the trunk. Brant ordered, his voice smug, like he was directing a show, not following procedure. Mitch Raskin, his red hair wild, eyes glittering like a kid who'd found a new toy, grinned and headed straight for the idle BMW, glowing black beneath the streetlight. No warning, no request for permission, no protocol. Bang! A sudden hit with his baton on the hood rang out like a gunshot in the quiet night. Raskin laughed, then landed another blow, this time smashing the right headlight. Crash! Glass scattered like a silent thread, spelled out in shards. Kendrick Alton felt the anger rise up in his throat, but he forced it down because he knew, with men like these, even a glance the wrong way could be twisted into resisting arrest. "Stop," he said, voice low and steady. "I've already explained. This is my home. My car. I'm not hiding anything." "Oh, sure," Raskin said with a grin, popping the trunk open. "You guys are always not hiding anything until we find a little miracle packet stuffed between notebooks." Brant raised an eyebrow, arms crossed like he was watching a play. "Honestly, I'm surprised this car isn't rented or stolen. But who knows? You're not from around here, are you? Guys like you don't just have a car like this. Not without something shady behind it." Kendrick clenched both fists, veins rising at his neck. "You don't have a right to destroy my property without cause, right?" Raskin burst out laughing, pulling his baton as he dug through the trunk. "Your rights are probably hiding under this black paint. Maybe they crawled into the toolbox." And just then, a woman's voice rang out from across the street. "Brant, Mitch, what the hell is going on here?" They both turned. It was Edith Granger, 78 years old, Kendrick's neighbor since before he ever became a federal judge. She wore a quilted robe, a small flashlight trembling in her hand, its beam dancing across the brick sidewalk. "I saw everything," she called out. "Kendrick lives here. You two are going way too far." Brant yanked his gun from its holster, pointed it directly at her. "Get back inside, Edith, before you make this worse." The air froze. Mrs. Granger stepped back, her lips trembling, voice quieter now. "You two, you'll have to explain this. I don't explain myself to people who interfere with police work," Raskin said with a grin. "And I'm sure you don't want to become part of an unfortunate incident, do you?" Kendrick turned to look. His eyes met Edith's. In her gaze, there was shame, but not his. Hers, because she knew, and still, she couldn't stop it. Mitch returned, carrying Kendrick's leather document bag. He dug through it, flinging everything onto the ground. A federal ID, court files, government papers. "What's this?" he scoffed, holding one up. "Official documents? You think anyone can't just print these off and pretend?" Brant chuckled. "Raskin, I gotta say, tonight's been kind of fun." Kendrick closed his eyes. He knew their fun was almost over, and then it would be his turn to speak. Just seconds after Mrs. Edith disappeared behind her white door, the stillness on Wilson Street stopped being peaceful. It became something brittle, dry and sharp in the throat, the kind of silence that rides alongside helplessness and shame. Not the shame of the guilty, but the ones who see and turn away. "Hold still, Mr. Lawyer," Brant Colridge muttered, jerking Kendrick's arm roughly. The pull made Kendrick stumble, his polished black shoes slipping off the edge of the small front step. "You're obstructing an investigation. Or at least, that's what we're thinking." Raskin chimed in, his voice as sweet as poison sugar. "And in this state, what we think is all that matters." A dry, sharp sound snapped through the air, clack. Cold steel locked around Kendrick's left wrist. Then his right arm was twisted hard behind his back, so tight it felt like his shoulder might tear. A sharp pain shot down his spine. Kendrick winced, but he didn't groan. He wouldn't give them that satisfaction. They shoved him straight onto the tiled porch. His glasses flew off his nose, skidding before coming to a stop, right at the edge of the welcome mat. His suit jacket was yanked out of place, exposing his belt and the crisp folds of his white shirt, a shirt he once wore with pride. Now, it was streaked with dust. "Maybe tonight," Raskin sneered, leaning close to Kendrick's ear. You learn something. Don't talk like you own the neighborhood. Because you don't. Across the street, a second-story light came on. A man stood behind the curtain. Kendrick couldn't see his face, but he saw the silhouette lean forward and suddenly shrink back. Curtain closed. Light off. A period, punctuating the end of any hope for compassion. Kendrick exhaled, his cheek pressed to the red brick porch tile. He thought of the family photo in the living room. He and his wife, arms linked on this very step. Their daughter's graduation smile, captured right here. And now, he, the homeowner, a 56-year-old federal judge, the son of a war veteran, was shackled like a petty thief. On that same step, did anyone see this? Kendrick asked, not because he needed an answer, but because he wanted the words to exist, so tonight wouldn't vanish into silence. Oh, they saw, Brant Colridge muttered, but they won't do a damn thing, because they know you don't belong here. A light breeze passed through the magnolia trees, leaves rattling in the middle of summer. Sweat collected across Kendrick's back. His knees burned under his slacks. Blood seeped through the fabric. But his eyes stayed wide open, staring up at the South Carolina sky, endless still, and watching, because right here, right now, silence had chosen its side. Snap! The sound of a leather belt being yanked loose cut through the summer night like a whip. Officer Mitch Raskin leaned into the back seat of Kendrick's Lexus, while Officer Brant Colridge tore through the front trunk, like he was dismantling a cross-state smuggling operation. He's got something in here, Colridge muttered, gloved hands digging into the glove compartment, flinging papers and documents onto the sidewalk like trash. Medical records, endoscopy reports, transplant documentation. What the hell is this guy, an organ trafficker? Raskin scoffed, eyeing an embossed folder from Columbia University Hospital. Kendrick, still handcuffed, rested one bloody knee on the concrete. His mouth clenched shut. Then he lifted his head, voice raspy, but clear. You're damaging personal property. You're conducting a search without a warrant, and you're detaining me without cause. I own this home. I have no weapon, no drugs, nothing illegal. And I've said it plainly. I am Judge Kendrick Alton, Eastern District Federal Court. Coleridge didn't even turn around. You could be the Pope. Still doesn't mean you aren't hiding something in one of those tidy little folders. You think we haven't seen it before? Exactly, Raskin added, mocking tone gleeful, like a man on the hunt. That suit doesn't hide the truth, Kendrick. A 2023 Lexus. Full-grain leather. Movado watch. Allen Edmonds shoes. You people love moving into white neighborhoods, living large, then acting like victims. Kendrick turned, locked eyes with Coleridge, and asked, what exactly are you saying? Coleridge grinned wide. What I'm saying is, people like you think all that outer shine can cover what's really underneath. Raskin, still crouched, pulled out a folding knife and ripped through the lining of the back seat. Foam burst out in tufts. The sound, a shrill, skin-crawling screech, like fingernails dragging across bare flesh. Nothing here, he muttered, annoyed. Guess he hit it deeper. You're fabricating this, Kendrick said, his voice firm, his eyes locked on theirs. You're looking for something to justify your violence. No need to fabricate. Coleridge growled. We just keep digging until we find something that looks close enough. Kendrick knew exactly what they were doing. They weren't searching for justice. They were searching for an excuse. Something, anything, to twist an unjustified stop into reasonable suspicion. And if it didn't exist, they'd bend reality until it did. That's why they ignored everything he said. They weren't listening, because they never intended to. In their minds, a black man in a quiet neighborhood, driving a luxury car, wearing a tailored suit, meant guilt. No evidence required. A breeze swept through. One hospital invoice with Kendrick Alton's name caught the wind and drifted quietly into the storm drain. And in that moment, Kendrick understood, if he stayed silent tonight, someone else would fall tomorrow for the same wrong glance from the wrong man with the right badge. Kendrick tilted his head, exhaled slowly, each breath like counting time with his chest. His eyes followed Raskin's every move. The red-haired officer was now yanking the passenger's seat out of its frame, digging into every crack and seam, chasing after a fantasy of guilt. Colridge stood nearby, arms crossed, a smug smirk tugging at the side of his mouth. The late summer breeze rustled through the maple trees, leaves whispering over a silence thick with insult. "You're making a serious mistake," Kendrick said, his voice almost surreal in its calm. "I am." "Oh, Lord," Raskin cut in, bursting into exaggerated laughter. "That old line again. You don't know who I am." He mimicked a high-pitched voice, swaying his hips like a stage performer. Colridge clapped like an audience member. "Let me guess. Nephew of Obama? CEO of some Fortune 500 company?" "No," Kendrick replied. "I'm a federal judge. I serve the Eastern District of Maryland. And what you're doing?" "Save it," Raskin snapped. "I once had a meth dealer tell me he was a NASA astronaut. You all run the same script." Colridge stepped in closer, crouching to eye level. His look dripped with contempt, wrapped in that smug democracy-for-show grin. "You know what?" he whispered. "Right now, that little title of yours? It's a joke. To me, you're just a black man, standing in the wrong place, at the wrong damn time." And at that exact moment, a sharp screech of tires rang out. From across the street, all three men turned their heads. A silver SUV had pulled up across the street. The door opened. An older woman stepped out, grocery bag in hand, her eyes locking onto the scene before her. It was Mrs. Lorraine Cutchins, a retired schoolteacher and a longtime neighbor of Kendrick's. Her gaze swept over the vandalized car, then stopped cold on the handcuffs binding Kendrick, in the middle of his own walkway. Colridge frowned. "You know her?" Kendrick said nothing. Raskin raised a hand, flashing a fake smile. "Good afternoon, ma'am." But Mrs. Lorraine didn't respond. She simply shook her head, quietly pulled out her phone, and started recording. Kendrick looked at her, not pleading, not desperate, just a confirmation, a recognition that someone was watching, that someone had chosen to witness and preserve the truth for tomorrow. For a moment, the entire neighborhood seemed to hold its breath. Colridge muttered, "You've got to be kidding me. This hits the internet. It'll just be more fake news. Fake news that gets you fired." Raskin mumbled, his hand frozen mid-reach toward the dashboard. Kendrick glanced at Mrs. Lorraine. He didn't need to speak. That look alone was a lifeline, a light in the pit. Someone saw. Someone dared to look. "You don't know who I am," Kendrick said again, this time slower, clearer. "And you don't want to know, because once you do, you'll be accountable." Colridge gave a dismissive snort, but his smirk had faded. It twisted at the corner, because now, this wasn't just their private little show. Now, someone was watching, and the eyes of a witness. Don't forget, Mrs. Lorraine Cutchins kept filming. Her hands didn't shake, her eyes didn't blink, but the silence around her hung like a suspended weight, ready to crash down. Kendrick Alton, still cuffed, stood up tall, with the poise of a man who had nothing left to prove. He rolled his shoulders, looked directly at Brant Colridge. His eyes no longer burned with rage, only quiet sorrow. "You really don't know who I am, do you?" Kendrick asked one last time, his voice deep and even, like a gavel echoing across a courtroom bench. Colridge scoffed. "You already said. Why should I care?" Kendrick raised his chin. Then, with perfect clarity, spoke like delivering a verdict from the bench. "I'm a federal judge." Raskin froze, halfway out of Kendrick's front seat. "What did you just say?" More precisely, Kendrick continued, "I am Kendrick Alton, Eastern District Court of Maryland. And the two of you, under federal law, have just committed 4 civil rights violations, 3 civil torts, and at least 2 indictable criminal offenses." The air shifted, thickened, heavy. Colridge blinked rapidly. Raskin swallowed hard. No more jokes. No more swagger. Only panic, sinking in, from the chest to the fingertips. "Wait," Colridge stammered. "How do I know you're not just making this up? You want to check the ID in my wallet? Or call the Federal Judiciary Office in Baltimore? My name's on the front page." Raskin slowly lowered the items in his hand. A pack of tissues. A leather case. Nothing illegal. "Oh God," he muttered. "If this gets to the feds, we're done." Colridge snapped toward him. "Turn off the patrol car camera. Now. It's been recording since we stepped out. If we delete it now, That's a major violation. Kendrick's lips curved, not quite a smile. Good. Leave it running. The clearer, the better. The scene. Two officers, now frozen like schoolboys caught cheating, stood motionless on the front lawn, surrounded by trimmed grass and afternoon sunlight, spilling across the porch. The very place they thought was their domain of absolute power had just become the scene of their unraveling. The cuffs on Kendrick's wrists were unlocked, quickly, clumsily. No apology, no eye contact, but Kendrick didn't ask for it. He walked to the front door, his back straight. His leather briefcase still sat beside the black dress shoes. They'd kicked off the step earlier. Mrs. Lorraine kept filming, still silent. But now, a small smile played at the corner of her lips. Kendrick turned back one last time, looked directly at the two officers. The law doesn't belong to you, and it is never a weapon for humiliation. Then he opened the door, stepped inside, and behind him, only silence remained. The oak door closed softly behind Kendrick Alton. Not even a full minute had passed when a sound broke the stillness. Low, steady, final. Boom, clack. A matte black SUV, no front license plate, rolled quietly into the driveway at 1225 Woodvale Terrace. Colridge and Raskin spun around, eyes wide. The vehicle stopped. The back door opened. A man in a navy blue suit stepped out. Chiseled face, dark sunglasses, a badge clipped just below his left lapel. No one needed to guess. He was Federal Agent Dorian Vellance. Brant Colridge. Mitch Raskin, he called out, 3 strides away. You are now under investigation. Under Title 18, Section 242 of the U.S. Criminal Code. For deprivation of rights under color of law. Wait. Colridge raised a hand, his voice cracking. We didn't know who he was. No, justification needed. Dorian cut in, holding up a tablet. Full name, Kendrick Ezekiel Alton. Federal Judge, Eastern District of Maryland. Appointed by the previous president. Public record. You didn't need to know who he was. You only needed to act within the law. He raised his hand. From the SUV, 2 agents in black uniforms stepped out, each one holding a pair of heavy-duty handcuffs. Make the arrests, Dorian said plainly. Raskin took a step back. Seriously? Right now? You want to wait for a warrant from the DOJ? Agent Dorian Vellance replied. Or should I call the Bellmere district attorney and add obstruction of justice to the charges? There was no way out. The 2 officers, who just moments ago had wielded power like a weapon, were now being handcuffed, hands twisted behind their backs, in full view of the very neighbors they once looked down on. Raskin glanced around, as if hoping someone might intervene, but no one came. Only the sound of windows closing, eyes turning away, and silence from those who had once been too afraid to speak. Then a door opened. Kendrick stepped outside. He said nothing. His leather briefcase rested neatly on the porch bench, now in his hand. He and Agent Dorian locked eyes. A nod. No words needed. They had worked together 3 years ago on a major corruption case in Baltimore. Dorian was the only one with the authority to verify Kendrick's identity. But he didn't have to ask. He already knew. Mrs. Lorraine had stopped recording. Now, she stood silently, satisfied. Kendrick walked toward Dorian. Thank you. It's not because you're a judge, Dorian replied. It's because no one deserves to be treated like that. Kendrick gave a slight nod. Raskin stood still, his head down. No more bravado. His eyes stared at the pavement, as if trying to hide from his own conscience. Some people will ask, Kendrick said quietly, turning toward Mrs. Lorraine. Why didn't shout? Why didn't resist? Why didn't strike back? He paused, faced the camera. The breeze moved gently past him. The answer's simple, he said, because justice doesn't need to scream to echo. It just needs the right action, at the right time, and someone calm enough to stand. As officers Colridge and Raskin were led away, there were no sirens, no arguments, only the sound of footsteps on the smooth concrete, echoing like an unspoken indictment of an entire system. Kendrick Alton didn't look away. His gaze wasn't angry. It wasn't filled with contempt. It was something deeper, a bitter disappointment. For men who had been given power, but used it to strip others of dignity. Agent Dorian Vellance rested a hand gently on Kendrick's shoulder. "We'll handle the rest." Kendrick nodded. He said nothing more. Across the front lawns, a few neighbors finally emerged. Some pretended to water plants. Some just stood still, fingers clutching their curtains. But their eyes, they had changed. From curiosity to confusion. They had just watched a black man, humiliated on his own doorstep, stand back up and turn his abusers into the accused. Kendrick returned to the porch. His briefcase still bore the dirt smudges from the officer's grip. He opened it, pulled out a folded set of documents, a thick court memo, stamped and sealed. And as he walked past Dorian to go back inside, he paused just for a moment. Raskin, the man who once mocked him, was now glancing back, his eyes pleading, like someone drowning in the sea of his own mistakes. And in that look wasn't just the fear of losing his badge, but the dawning panic of someone realizing he wasn't a keeper of justice, just a tool of prejudice. For the first time in his life, Raskin knew what it felt like to be seen, but not believed. Kendrick stared at him, and when he spoke, his voice was low, deliberate, every word measured. "See you in court." It didn't land like a threat. It struck like a declaration, a message, not just to two officers, but to an entire system that had dismissed his presence, shredded his car, and crushed his dignity, simply because his skin didn't match the zip code. He didn't curse. He didn't scream. He didn't punch the steering wheel. He just walked away, steady, silent. That's how Kendrick Alton, a federal judge, chose to answer for all the years he and so many others have been forced to endure, not with handcuffs, not with fists, but with the scales of justice. That afternoon, the footage recorded by Mrs. Lorraine's camera was uploaded online. A black man humiliated on his own doorstep, then flipping the narrative, not with violence, but with staggering calm. Within 24 hours, the video had over 1 million shares. Hashtags #Judge Alton and #JusticeInBellmere flooded every platform. But more than that, his words, "See you in court," became a rallying cry across America, a reminder that justice, when placed in the right hands, doesn't need to shout, to shake a generation. Some battles in life don't require bullets or blood, just one person, calm enough to stand in the storm and speak at the right time, in the right place. The story of Judge Kendrick Alton isn't just about racial injustice. It's a solemn reminder of resilience, dignity, and faith in justice, even when the system forgets its meaning. He didn't fight back. He didn't bow down. He simply looked his oppressors in the eye and said, "See you in court." And sometimes, just that is enough to make a nation pause. If this story made you reflect, if you or someone you know has ever been in a moment like this, drop a comment below. Mr. 7 Stories reads every word you share. And if you believe justice isn't just about law, but about the choices we make each day, subscribe, turn on the bell, because there are more stories that need to be told, heard, and remembered. Thank you for listening. And like Kendrick did, walk forward with dignity.